Bear cubs were left to die near a cabin. Then the ranger discovered a shocking truth. The early morning mist hung low over the dense forest, curling around the trunks of towering pines like ghostly fingers. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed, its voice echoing eerily through the stillness. Ranger Ethan Hayes had walked these trails for years, yet today the air felt heavier, laden with an unspoken warning. He adjusted the strap of his backpack and squinted at the faint outline of the cabin ahead. Weathered and worn, it leaned slightly to one side, a remnant of a past life. The windows were clouded with years of dirt and neglect, and the door hung crooked on its hinges. Ethan slowed his steps, a gnawing unease curling in his stomach. Something about this place didn't feel right. As he approached, the faintest noise reached his ears, a soft, high-pitched whimper. He froze, scanning the surrounding trees. The sound came again, sharper this time, unmistakable. It was the cry of a cub, tiny and terrified. Ethan's boots crunched over frost-covered leaves as he moved closer to the cabin. The air smelled damp, a mix of moss and decaying wood, but beneath it was another scent, subtle, sharp, and heart-wrenching. The unmistakable odor of fear. Peering around the corner, Ethan spotted them, small brown shapes huddled against the cabin's foundation. 5 tiny bear cubs, shivering and weak, their fur matted and covered in dirt. Their eyes, wide and frightened, locked onto him. He knelt slowly, careful not to startle them. Each tiny body trembled violently with every gust of wind. The realization hit him like a blow. These cubs hadn't wandered here by chance. Someone had left them. Alone. Vulnerable. To die. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had dealt with abandoned wildlife before, but this was different. Something darker had unfolded here, and he was the first to discover it. The forest around Ethan seemed to hold its breath. Every snapping twig, every rustle of leaves sounded like a warning. The cubs' cries grew louder, more desperate, and he could see how weak they were, tiny bodies pressed together for warmth, soaked from the morning dew. Ethan crouched closer, keeping his voice low. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." His words felt almost absurd in the vast wilderness, but he hoped the cubs understood the calm in his tone. One of the smaller cubs, trembling violently, raised its head and met his gaze. Fear and confusion swirled in its dark eyes, yet there was a flicker of hope. The ranger's mind raced. These cubs weren't just lost, they had been deliberately abandoned. Whoever had done this hadn't intended for them to survive. The trap of loneliness and hunger had been laid, and now he was the only thing standing between them and certain death. From deeper in the forest, the wind carried a faint, unsettling sound, a human presence. Ethan's pulse quickened. He scanned the tree line, spotting footprints partially hidden by fallen leaves. They were recent. Someone had been here, and they hadn't left voluntarily. His instincts told him to move cautiously. The cubs needed immediate care, but the forest could be dangerous. Wild predators, unstable terrain, even humans with cruel intentions. Ethan's ranger training kicked in. He quickly assessed the nearest resources, a shallow stream for water, fallen branches to create a temporary shelter, and his backpack with basic supplies. Carefully, he moved closer to the cubs, speaking softly, each step deliberate. The smallest one whimpered, nearly collapsing, and he scooped it gently into his arms. The others hesitated, eyes wide, but Ethan's steady presence gradually drew them closer. He knew this was only the beginning. The cubs were alive for now, but the real challenge, their survival, and uncovering the truth behind their abandonment, was yet to come. Ethan settled the cubs in a small clearing beside the cabin, arranging fallen leaves and branches into a makeshift bed. Their tiny bodies huddled together, shivering despite the thin rays of morning sunlight. As he carefully inspected them, the ranger noticed bruises, scratches, and dirt matted into their fur, signs that the cubs hadn't merely been lost, they had been abandoned and left to suffer. He knelt beside them, scanning the ground for clues. Broken branches, displaced rocks, and trampled undergrowth told a story of struggle. A small trap, twisted and discarded, caught his eye. Its jaws were rusted but cruelly sharp. Whoever had said it hadn't cared whether it injured or killed the cubs, they only cared about control. Ethan's stomach tightened. This wasn't just neglect, it was deliberate cruelty. His ranger instincts flared. He would need to document everything, gather evidence, and alert wildlife authorities. But for now, the cubs' immediate survival was his priority. He pulled out a water bottle and soaked some leaves, offering them to the cubs one by one. Hesitant at first, they lapped the water greedily, tiny tongues trembling. Ethan whispered encouragements, each word measured and calm. The forest remained still, as if it too watched and waited. Then he noticed footprints leading toward the deeper woods, fresh and unervingly deliberate. They were human, clearly. The larger boots left shallow impressions in the damp soil, and small smudges of blood near the trap hinted at a struggle. Ethan's heart sank. The cub's mother had likely been killed here, leaving them alone, defenseless and grieving. The realization burned within him. Someone had violated the sacred bond between mother and child, and now it was up to him to restore it. Every ounce of his training, every survival skill, and every ounce of compassion would be tested. He took a deep breath, setting the cubs gently down and scanning the horizon. Somewhere beyond the trees, the forest held its secrets, and among them, the shocking truth waiting to be uncovered. Ethan's mind raced as he traced the footprints deeper into the forest, careful not to startle the cubs. Each step revealed more evidence: broken branches where someone had forced their way through, discarded wrappers, and faint traces of blood smeared across the undergrowth. The realization settled like a stone in his chest. The cubs hadn't been left by chance, they had been deliberately orphaned. He followed the trail cautiously, senses heightened. His training as a ranger had taught him to. Ethan's stomach churned. Whoever had abandoned the cubs had killed their mother. The forest, usually serene and forgiving, now felt heavy with the weight of cruelty. He knelt to inspect a piece of discarded clothing snagged on a thorn, a badge of hunters, partially torn, smeared with blood. The pieces clicked together in his mind. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. He felt anger rise but pushed it down, focusing instead on the cubs. Their tiny eyes had followed him from the clearing, silently pleading for safety. They had already endured loss, fear, and starvation, and he could not allow more harm to come their way. The ranger made his decision. He would take them to safety, report the hunters, and ensure the cubs received the care they desperately needed. Every instinct told him time was critical. The longer they stayed in this forest, the more vulnerable they became. He returned to the clearing, gathering the cubs gently into his arms. Their trembling bodies pressed against him, trusting despite the trauma they had endured. "You're safe now," Ethan whispered, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'll make sure no one hurts you again." The forest seemed to respond to his promise, the wind whispering through the pines as if acknowledging his vow. Somewhere out there, the mother's spirit lingered, protective and proud. Ethan knew this was only the beginning, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead to save these innocent lives. Ethan moved cautiously, cradling the cubs in his arms as he navigated the uneven forest floor. Each step was calculated, his ranger instincts guiding him around hidden roots and slippery patches of moss. The cubs whined softly, their tiny claws brushing against his jacket, seeking warmth and reassurance. Back at the ranger station, Ethan quickly set up a temporary enclosure. He lined it with soft blankets and branches, creating a secure, sheltered space where the cubs could rest and regain their strength. One by one, he placed them inside, gently encouraging them to explore their new surroundings. Their little noses twitched as they sniffed the unfamiliar scents, eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. While the cubs rested, Ethan worked methodically, documenting everything. Photographs of injuries, notes about the trap, and sketches of the forest scene would all serve as crucial evidence for the authorities. He knew the hunters could not be allowed to continue their cruelty unchecked. As evening fell, he prepared a makeshift feeding station. A mixture of formula and water, carefully warmed to mimic a mother's milk, was offered to the cubs. Hesitant at first, they soon lapped it eagerly, tiny bodies trembling with relief. The ranger watched silently, a mix of exhaustion and determination settling over him. Each cub that survived this ordeal felt like a small victory, a testament to the resilience of life. Suddenly, the wind rustled the nearby trees, and Ethan's senses snapped to attention. He knew that danger could still be near, whether from predators or humans. But in that moment, he allowed himself a brief pause, watching the cubs curl up together, safe for the first time since their mother had been taken from them. He whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else, "We'll get through this. You're not alone anymore." The forest outside was quiet, but the ranger's resolve burned brightly. Tomorrow, and every day after, he would ensure these innocent lives were protected. The rescue was only the beginning. Survival, growth, and eventual freedom awaited, and he would be there every step of the way. Weeks passed, and the cubs slowly regained their strength. Ethan observed them with a mixture of pride and awe. Milo, the boldest of the five, led the others in playful explorations around the enclosure. Tiny paws swiped at fallen leaves, and high-pitched squeals echoed through the clearing. Each day, their trust in him grew, a silent bond forged through care and protection. Ethan knew the world outside was harsh. The hunters who had caused this suffering were still at large, and human recklessness often clashed with the fragile rhythm of nature. Yet, witnessing the cubs' resilience reminded him that compassion could counteract cruelty, even in the darkest circumstances. He documented their recovery meticulously, preparing for their eventual release into a safer, wild habitat. The cubs would grow strong, learn to survive, and perhaps one day roam freely without ever needing human intervention again. One quiet evening, Ethan sat on the porch of the ranger station, watching the sunset paint the forest in brilliant shades of amber and gold. He reflected on the delicate balance between human influence and wildlife, the power of one person's actions to make a difference. These little ones survived because someone cared, he whispered to the wind, and maybe that's the lesson we all need. The cubs, once abandoned and left to die, had become a living testament to resilience, trust, and the impact of kindness. In saving them, Ethan realized that protecting life, even the smallest, most vulnerable life, was a duty, a privilege, and a reminder that humanity could rise above cruelty when it chose to act.